There's going to be like a 50-50 shot I'm out of focus for like most of this video, so we're just going to roll with it. I am a huge fan of Ninjago, and for a while now I've been trying off and on to see if I could recreate the Spinjitzu effect from the show in Blender, and I've never been able to get it right. I've gotten things that are close, like they get the idea across, but I've never been able to like get a one-to-one recreation of what they have in the show. And as a perfectionist, that kind of burns me up a little bit, because like they made the show in 2011, which first of all, that was 15 years ago. We're old. But second of all, like they made this in 2011 on a TV show budget. Like the tools have only gotten more advanced and more accessible since then. So in theory, I should be able to replicate what they're doing pretty closely to how they did it. So that's going to be my goal today. I'm going to sit down and see if I can recreate the Spinjitzu effect from the show in Blender. Now the look of Spinjitzu has changed a lot through the show, so I should probably be specific. I'm trying to recreate the season 1 look of Spinjitzu, like this type that's going behind me right now, like classic Spinjitzu. So obviously first I need to rewatch Ninjago for research purposes.
Long before time had a name.
Yeah. Okay.
It was to protect him.
Okay, this is something that annoys me so much. I hear people say like, oh, Kai should have been the Green Ninja, Kai should have been, like the whole point of his character was learning to let go of the desire to be the Green Ninja, to protect him. Like that's the whole point of his character arc. That's my Ninjago hot take for the day. Kai should not have been the Green Ninja. Okay, I think I got it. I think I figured it out. So I've been trying to figure out if the effect is like a mesh or if it's like an actual simulation. And it is a mesh, but not in the way that I originally thought. At first I thought it was a mesh like in the shape of a cone, but if you look at this clip here, you actually see that it's multiple rings all stacked on top of each other to give it the shape of a tornado. Okay, I think this gives me everything I need. All right, so here in Blender, I'm gonna start out by deleting the default cube as is tradition, and I'll also get rid of this lamp. So what I'm gonna do is I'm going to add a torus, and I'll shade that smooth, and this is really gonna be the base of our effect. So first I'm gonna go to the shading tab, and we're gonna give it that energy vortex look. So I'm gonna add a new material, then I'm gonna Shift A and add a noise texture. So I'm going to bring down the scale a bit, make it a bit bigger, and bring up the detail and the roughness and the lacunarity. I don't know how to pronounce that. Just bring it up. All these sliders just add a bit more detail to it. Then I'm going to bring out some distortion to give it more of a swirly energy look. Then with that selected, I'm going to hit Control T to bring up the mapping nodes. Make sure you have Node Wrangler enabled when you do this in preferences. So I'm just going to bring up the Z scale to squeeze it down, and let's see, a bit more, and bring down the X scale a little bit. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a color ramp, and I'm just going to crunch that down somewhere around there. Then in our principled VSDF, I'm going to plug that into the alpha, so you can kind of tell where this is going. Next, I'm going to go to the emission, and I'm just going to bring the strength up to something big like 50. Now, in the color, I can give it any color that I want. What are we thinking? I think I'm going to go, for this tutorial, let's do green. Let's do Green Ninja. I also find that it looks better if you take the base color and bring the color down to black. Makes the colors a little bit more vibrant. Now we can go back to our layout. With that. So we're already starting to get the idea, but it looks way too smooth right now. So under modifiers, I can add a displace. Right now it's displacing the whole thing evenly. So I'm going to add a new texture. Then in the texture tab, I can change the type to clouds. And I'm going to change the type to hard. So then back in the modifiers, I can take the strength and just bring that down quite a bit. We want this to be mostly subtle. Just break up those lines a little bit. I also, something you can do to make it look a bit better is add a subdivision surface. I'll smooth out those a bit. And again, you can play around with the strength, see how you like it. I'm liking that. I'm liking how that looks. Now it looks good, but obviously it's not a tornado yet. So we can do that using geometry nodes. Now, full disclosure, I have very little experience using geometry nodes. There might be a better or more efficient way to do what I'm doing, but this is what I was able to come up with after playing around with it for a while, and frankly, at this point, I'm scared to touch anything. So how this is going to work is we're going to add a path and we're going to duplicate these along the path. So what I'm going to do is I can do Shift A, going to add a curve and make that a Bezier curve. So then what I can do is I'm going to hit Tab and I'm going to select this first end of the path, hit Shift S and bring the selection to cursor. Then I'm going to select the other one and do the same thing, but with that one still selected, I'm just going to bring that up on the Z axis. So now we have a path that is perfectly straight going up. So now we can face our fears and jump into the geometry nodes editor.
I think I know what I'm afraid of!
Close this area here. And with our ring selected, I'm going to add a new geometry node system. Then I'm going to add a instance on points node. And I don't want this to be the points, I want this to be the instance. Take that out. Then I can take our Bezier curve, just drag that in here. Then I'm going to pull out from the geometry and do a curve to points node. Then I'll take those points and plug it into the points. So now we have our torus being duplicated all along the thing, and we can change the amount that we have with this little slider right here. I'll just keep that at default for now. So right now they all have the exact same rotation. So what we can do to randomize that a bit is, let me just drag these up a little bit. Then I'm going to add a random value. I'm going to set that to vector. And I will plug this into our rotation. So now it's just kind of going every which way. So in the max, I want to take, as far as I understand, this is X, this is Y. So I'm going to take these and set them to 0. But the Z I can bring up so that we have some randomness there. Then in the minimum, I'm going to take the X, bring it up a little bit. Same with the Y. And then again, we can play with our Z. So now we're starting to get some randomness. Make it look more organic. But obviously right now it's not in the shape of a tornado. So let's fix that. So that is going to be with our scale slider. So you see if I bring down the scale, it makes all of them smaller. But we want them to be going down in a gradient from top to bottom. So what I can do is I can add a gradient texture. And I'm going to set the type to spherical. So I can plug the color into the scale, but that is going the wrong direction. So what I can do is I'm going to add a color ramp, plug that in between. Just going to switch these inputs here. And I'm going to change that type to cardinal, give me a better easing. So right now only half of it is going down into a tornado. So what I can do is I can take our Bezier curve, go to edit mode. I'm just going to take this top point and bring it down the x-axis until it's an actual tornado shape. There might be another way to fix this. This is just what's worked for me. Let's go out of edit mode, back into our torus. So right now it's a little bit too intense of a fall off, so I'm just going to bring up the low point and then bring down the high point until it's in a tornado shape. And right now there are a few gaps between it, so we can just bring up the count. I'm gonna do somewhere around 14, 15, usually looks good for me. Now you can see it's really starting to look like Spinjitzu. I'm looking at, I feel like in the shading, maybe I want to crunch the color ramp just a little bit more so it's not as intense. Now it looks really good in this one frame, but if we press play, it's not spinning. So if we want to animate this, I'll just go to solid view to make things run a little faster. So what I can do is I can add a empty. So I can take our tornado and parent it to this empty. So now if I rotate it, it sticks with it. So then on the rotation, I'm going to take the Z and I'm going to type hashtag frame, enter. So now it's automatically spinning without having to play with keyframes. You can tweak the speed by adding like a divide by 2 here, but honestly, I think that initial speed looks pretty good. We can give this even more of an unstable look is by going to the animation tab, and I'm going to switch this screen over here to the graph editor. So I'm just going to add a keyframe in the Y of our empty. Then what I can do is with the Y selected, I can go to modifiers and add a noise modifier. Now by default, that is way too much, so I think I'm gonna bring up the scale a bit and the strength as well. None of these are exact numbers, just play around with it until it looks good to taste. Now in the show, whenever they do Spinjitzu, it also gives off a lot of like sparks to show how energetic it is. So we can do that pretty easily. So what I'm gonna do is I'm going to add a cone and rotate that so it's facing the right way. I'm gonna bring this up on the Z-axis and scale it down until it roughly fits the tornado. It doesn't need to be exact, but you want to get it as close as possible. So then I'm going to go ahead and parent this to our empty, so now it is spinning with the tornado. And now, with this cone selected, I'm going to add a particle system to it. So I'd add some particles. So we want them to be shooting out, not just falling down through the ground. So I can add some velocity, and I'm just going to take the object velocity and bring that up. That should, yeah. You know what, maybe actually, let's do it a little bit more. Now they're all kind of shooting out. I don't want them to be lasting that long, so I'm gonna take the lifetime and just set that to 10. Maybe bring up the randomness a bit. There we go. Now in order to make them look like sparks, what we can do is we can add a cube, scale that down quite a bit. Then I'll just drag this way off to the side. I'm gonna give that new material, and I'm gonna make that an emission material. So now we can bring up the emission, and I'm gonna change that to, since our thing is green, I'm gonna make the sparks green. So now we can go back to our particles. Then I'm going to change the render settings from render as halo to render as object. And I'm going to take our cube as that object. Now, I don't want to be seeing the cone here, so I'm going to uncheck show emitter, and I'm gonna do the same in the viewport. So I'm just gonna bring up the number a bit, maybe double that. And now we've got sparks shooting out from our Spinjitzu. And you see this a lot better if you turn on motion blur. So let's make a little scene with this. I'm going to add a plane, just scale that up a bit. Go into render view, and I'm gonna turn on ray tracing. Now this effect looks a lot better in cycles. Turn that on. It'll automatically start illuminating the scene there. Now, one thing you may notice is that the middle of our Spinjitzu has these kind of dark spots. That's because, unfortunately, because this is using a lot of transparency in the light paths, you're gonna need to bring up the transparent bounces a bunch. Somewhere like 20 looks good for me. Keep things running smoothly. I'm gonna keep it in Eevee for now. Now, also, if you want to animate this like coming on, you don't want it to be on the whole time, what we can do is we can take our empty, go maybe like 15 frames in, set a keyframe on it, then I'm going to go back to the beginning, and I'll just drag that down on the Z, bring it from underneath the ground, add a new keyframe. So now if I press play, it's animating on and going up. And again, it's really easy to change all these settings. So like maybe I want to make this like Kai's, like a fire one. We just change the color, and boom, we're good to go. Maybe we can do like a J or Zane over here. Maybe we want to do a pink Zane, a little deep cut there. So what we can do is we can set up a little scene with this. I'm gonna take my camera and let's just set up something, render that. And because we're not dealing with any like volumetrics or stuff, this effect actually is pretty light to render. You throw some glows on that in compositing and you've got a really good looking Spinjitzu effect. Honestly, I'm pretty happy with how this turned out. I think it's pretty close to how they did it in the show itself. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more of me experimenting in Blender, you can check out this video right here where I try to recreate the backrooms.